everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nothing But Locks podcast. I'm your host, Ali Melnicki, accompanied by my favorite coworker, Robert Kowalski. How are you doing today, Robert?
Ali, the Monday leading into March Madness weekend is one where I could finally just lean back in this office chair and just say, okay, what in the hell just happened? How did we get here? And I'm telling you, for someone that's addicted to chaos like I am, boy, do I love what just happened.
I don't think anyone foresaw what was going to transpire. No number one seeds for the first time in history advanced past the Sweet 16. I can't say I was completely surprised. Let's start with the Sweet 16. Let's go all the way back to Thursday and Friday's games. I can't say I was totally surprised with Houston and Alabama losing. I think Alabama, I was a little more surprised because I literally thought they had a cakewalk, especially with teams like Arizona and Baylor going down early. But Houston didn't surprise me. I know they probably surprised you because you were confident that they would go all the way. But it didn't really surprise me. And quickly, just for the readers or the listeners to know, I'm currently sitting second in all three of my March Madness pools. I just need UConn to win one game, and I will win two of them. I can't win the other one because the person in front of me has UConn, and he has, I think, 40 more points than me. So there's just no mathematics that I would be able to pass him. So I had a very good year with my brackets, especially if the last 2 years, I don't think I made it outside of opening weekend. But let's get back to the number one seeds, Robert. Who surprised you the most losing over the weekend? Was it Alabama losing to San Diego State, or was it Houston losing to Miami?
Definitely Alabama. I thought that Houston probably had a bit of a problem. Again, just being from the American Conference. Yes, did they have all of the pieces there? But yet, and then again, their strength of schedule was the one that I was mostly concerned about. Alabama, on the other hand, they had everything in their favor, and I didn't think that they were going to have any kind of resistance, literally probably up until championship game, Ali.
Yeah, I when I saw Alabama was losing, and then they kind of came back in the second. I think they pulled within a point or two. I thought they were going to end up pulling away over San Diego State, but it was the opposite. Houston pulled away. And I know last week, Robert, when we talked on the podcast, we were saying, I thought that Alabama would cover the big, I think it was 7.5 points against San Diego State. I thought that San Diego State had not seen an offense like Alabama all year, but it was actually the opposite. It seemed like Alabama hadn't seen a defense like San Diego State all year. So is it fair to say, I know Florida Atlantic had a very nice run to the Final Four, but I think that if you look at the track record, I think San Diego State had a lot harder of a time getting there. Would you say that San Diego State was the most underrated team in this tournament so far?
So that, I'm glad you brought this up. I did a little exercise because math, and what I wanted to figure out was if you were going to do a rolling parlay from a sports betting perspective, because that's the way my brain clicks. If you just look at doing a rolling parlay from the very first game 2 Thursdays ago and just betting $1 and starting with $1 on each school going all the way through yesterday, where would you be? So San Diego State, once they move forward, if you placed $1 starting bet on them versus Charleston and then you roll them all the way up, you're at $16.65 after 4 wins. So you probably are looking at getting to the pre-dance future pool price of 80 to 1. If you go and see them, they're a small little favorite. I'm just looking right now. They're a small favorite over Florida Atlantic, so you're not going to make much there. But then you're going to definitely be a dog to UConn. So that rolling parlay probably gets you close to 80 to 1.
Wow.
Less versus Miami, but pretty good to get close to 80 to 1 given the upsets in SDSU's region. So nice little rolling parlay there. If we're looking at the team that I think is the biggest of upsets, I'm staring right at you Miami Hurricanes.
Miami, their team I had going to the Sweet 16. I almost picked them to go past Houston, but I didn't. I did not see them beating Texas yesterday, Robert. Especially Texas had a 12-point lead late in the I believe it was late in the second half. I think there was 8 minutes or 9 minutes ago, and Texas had a 12-point double-digit lead. I didn't see them beating Texas at all. I can't say I'm totally surprised when they beat Houston because, like I said, I almost put them. But Texas just seemed like they were the hottest team, beside not named UConn, entering the tournament. What happened with their collapse yesterday, Robert?
Right. Yeah. So that's exactly what I was looking, right? It's a tale of the two. First half, I'm like, yeah, okay. It's going to be Texas, home field and all that. 37-17 run. And then 28-11, the last 8.5 minutes. Their inside the arc was insanity. They shot 66% from 2-point shooting. Free throws, excellent job of getting to the line, 28 of 32. And this is the thing about Miami. They did this with only 2 3-pointers made, Allie, two.
Yeah.
In an era where that's all you do is hoist threes, they were 2 for 8. So they didn't even do well from outside the arc. The inside, a whole other story. They won by a count of 82-51. So, I mean, right now, if we go ahead and take a peek into Saturday, they're going to be 5.5-point dogs to UConn. But I mean, Allie, when this all started, the hot inside sharp bet was Drake upsetting Miami. That didn't happen.
Which I did not support. I said that was the hot pick. That was actually the only 12 over the 5 that I didn't. No, I didn't take Oral Roberts over Duke. But yeah, I was not following.
That's the other one, right?
I did not follow you those.
Yeah. They beat Drake by going full court on them, right? Then Indiana, it was all outside. Everything was from the outside. And then Texas, they beat them by taking only 2 threes. So they seem to be the most malleable in terms of how they can go ahead and beat any school out there. That being said, unfortunately, they're going to be playing the de facto number one, the one school that I know you had as your champion basically from day one. I like them as well before laying off on UCLA. This shows you about my instincts. And then going back to the team that I felt was the biggest dog and the most unexpected participant in the Final Four here in Texas, it's Miami, right? So again, doing this rolling dollar parlay, doing a dollar straight bet. So if you do a dollar straight bet on Miami versus Drake and you roll it up after 4 wins, you're at $35 and change. So it's 35-1. So they were 40-45-1 just to win 6 games. So they're currently plus 180 versus UConn. You win there, and that rolls it to about 98-1. They'd be a virtual pick in the finals, which, by the way, how insane would it be if it was FAU versus Miami?
Yeah.
We wish we had Mark Thomas on for that one. I don't know if he's going to have an opinion either way, but
I don't think he's a March Madness fan. If you get the Bucks, he'll talk about Wisconsin. But
so basically, if they make it to the finals, no matter who they play, there'll be a pick. So that doubles it to just under 200-1. Now that is fun. And far, far better value than betting them at 45-1 in future pools before the tournament begins. So they, in my opinion, are the biggest upset to go this far. And yay for the Hurricanes.
We'll have plenty to talk about in our later week's episode. Later this week, we'll talk about the Final Four preview and everything in our picks. But I do want to make this episode focus on what transpired over the weekend because there is a lot to dissect. Quickly, because I do want to get into UCLA and Gonzaga. That's one of the big games that I was just bewildered about how that unfolded. And as well as UConn and Gonzaga. What were the betting trends over the weekend, Robert? Was it more overs or unders? I felt like it was more overs just from my eye. And what about dogs versus favorites?
Right. So for the better part of the entire weekend, when you looked at what we were discussing, and we were discussing quite a bit about the totals and how they were going, significantly to the under, the bets kept coming to the over. And so regardless of how you looked at the entirety of the tournament, you can't resist doing the parlay where you just simply, bet on the favorite to go to the over. So, not so good. Dogs, 2-0 straight up and against the spread on Sunday. 3-1 straight up and against the spread in the Elite Eight overall. I mean, look, favorites are still leading significantly, 39-20 straight up, but against the spread, it's literally right down the middle. It's like 29-29 with one push. That one pick 'em, which was Gonzaga and UCLA. Totals on Sunday was 1-1, 2-2 in the Elite Eight, but under still significantly 36-24. That's 60% against the spread if you go under the posted total of the entire tournament.
I guess it's something to really focus on too, because I would say, Robert, out of the 4 teams remaining, some of them have very, very good defenses. I think Miami's defense is underrated. San Diego State's defense is definitely underrated. UConn's solid defense. I think that's something that people should take into account next year when they're filling out our brackets, right? What defensive team can really shut down a team that relies just really on the three or points in the paint? What do you think about that?
Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it absolutely. And so it's one thing to have your figures posted as you go in. You definitely want to go and seed your teams that are far more defensively efficient than not. You want to push them forward. The ones that I thought were going to do far better were definitely Alabama, definitely Tennessee. So what their downfall was clearly just being buzzed and not being able to perform. They scored 55 points in the game that they lost. So yes, they did well defensively in that game, but UConn's at another level right now. Their adjusted offense has just skyrocketed since the tournament's begun. But to go back to your point, absolutely filling out brackets, predicting tournament play on neutral grounds, factor in defense, factor in strength of schedule. That's the way I did it.
So before we get into the games from over the weekend, I just want to ask one more question while we're on the Alabama and everything. What do you think is more disappointing for the number 1 seeds? Because Florida Atlantic, they made the Final Four, and San Diego State made the Final Four. Both teams took out a number 1 seed. Is Purdue losing in the first? Oh no, Florida Atlantic did take out a 1 seed. They took out the Fairleigh Dickinson that took them out. But is it more embarrassing / just eye-opening that Alabama lost to San Diego State and they're the overall number 1 seed and couldn't make it out of the 16? Or is it still Purdue lost to Fairleigh Dickinson, a number 16 seed? What is more disappointing?
For me, it is Purdue and their entire Big Ten. Get out of here. I mean, how many made it in? Way too many schools qualified out of the Big Ten, and there was like nothing. Maryland did nothing. Michigan State, no. Indiana got beat by Miami. Illinois, why? So Penn State, again, I don't think that we should really focus on how bad Purdue was. I just want to take the entire body of work, the whole conference, and significantly turn down their dial going into the tournament next year.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. Let's talk about the game that I just could not believe on Thursday, and that is UCLA and Gonzaga. So I did have my brother place some bets for me back in Jersey. I hit the Kansas State money line, and of course, since I did win on that, I figured, hey, let me try to double my winnings and take UCLA's money line. I know a lot of people were coming in on UCLA, but I really liked UCLA. I thought they matched up very well against Gonzaga. I didn't think Gonzaga could keep up with UCLA scoring. I know UCLA was missing 2 of their starters. Still, Gonzaga pretty much relies on Drew Timme. And I basically said before the game, just double team Timme and you're fine. It seemed like everything was going the Bruins way, Robert. They were up by, I think, 13 at halftime. And then they just completely collapsed in the second half. And then they were down by 10 points with 3 minutes to go. And they came back and took a 1-point lead with like 40 seconds to go. It was one of the craziest endings I've ever seen. But what was the tribute to UCLA just blowing it like that? Did they just run out of gas? Did they not have the bench depth? What did you see?
Yeah. So first off, what did I see? Um, how many years has Drew Timmy played for Gonzaga?
I feel like 12.
Andy's coming back again next year. By the way, this kid travels. I don't know if you saw the replays and some of the things
He
that I
does. And in
this kid
fact, in the
travels.
game against UConn in the first half, Mark Few was getting on the referees because they called Drew Timmy with 2 straight travels. I was like, well, it's a travel. I mean, what do you want him to do?
He definitely picks up his pivot foot, but neither here nor there. I would do the same if I was that gigantic. Look, why did UCLA look so awful most of the second half? They were getting absolutely crushed on the boards for the game. Gonzaga out rebounded UCLA 49
Yeah.
to 26 to 26. And I think that ultimately, they came back because they were able to hit their free throws and, seemingly come on in and make it really clutch at the very end. I mean, a 14-1, run late, it's insane. But ultimately, Gonzaga, they couldn't close because of turnover issues, right? Then they gagged their free throws. It's just an amazing final minute. And honestly, that could have went either way. So actually, it was a 14-3 run for UCLA. But it was just an insane finish. Ultimately, I think that if UCLA could have just done a better job, cleaning up their boards, they would have won this game.
Let's move on then to the next game, which was Gonzaga and UConn. I know I had a lot of people ask me if I was nervous because obviously I've been riding UConn since before the tournament. I have them winning. I was not nervous at all, Robert. Let me rephrase that. I was cautiously optimistic that UCLA would not only win and cover, but would do it pretty comfortably. And even though the first half was kind of back and forth, UConn did open it up before the halftime. I think they took a 7 or 9 point lead. But I was never in doubt that UConn couldn't beat Gonzaga because I said they're the team. Dan Hurley is one of the smartest coaches out there. They're gonna isolate Drew Timmy and double team him. And you take away Timmy, and Gonzaga doesn't have a team beyond that. They did exactly that. They held Timmy to single-digit points in the first half. He got in foul trouble early. They were exposing his travel. I will say, out of the entire tournament, this game I was the most impressed with. And I'm not just saying that because I'm riding UConn, but they took a Gonzaga team that was hot, that people actually thought could probably go the distance, and they destroyed them. They won by almost 30 points. Is that fair to say that might have been the most impressive win in this tournament?
UConn won by final margins of 24, 15, 23, and then 28, right? Yeah, almost 30, 28 against points. Now take a look. It's against point spreads of 9.5, 4, 3.5, and then 3.
Mm-hmm.
I just mentioned that Miami is the biggest surprise. In another way, from a surprise, UConn's got to be maybe the most massively underrated by market, game by game, in terms of potential in tournament style basketball ever. They were incredible. Now look, nobody's going to win shooting 2 of 20 on threes, and that's what Gonzaga did.
Right.
With Connecticut, they were 11-31, so they did what they needed to do. They out rebounded Gonzaga, and they literally controlled the game right from the first time out on. So yeah, they are exactly what every coach's dream of in tournament play. Great from the outside, swarming defense, excellent rebounding team. And then UConn's just simply the deeper, more physical side, no matter what, against everybody right now, Allie.
Yeah, I really, and again, because I need UConn to win at least one game for me to win 2 of my pools, so I don't want to jinx them. But I know Miami just pulled off a great upset as well against Texas, but UConn just seems unstoppable right now. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, they are. Absolutely. I mean, again, it's not a factor of, where they got and how they got to this point. But I mean, at this point, Allie, there's very, very little that you're looking for in terms of offense, because right now they're able to perform against any school that they're playing up against. And right now, as they face everyone, They are able to score with anybody. The defense is doing just enough to keep them in the games. We don't have to worry about strength of schedule anymore. Right now, this is as efficient a team that there is, and I'd be honestly shocked if they didn't win the title.
Let's reseed these teams right now. Obviously, if you had to reseed power rankings 1 to 4, UConn's number 1.
Yes.
Where do you rank the next 3 teams, Robert?
Okay, I will. Yeah, it's UConn number 1. Number 2, and this one's going to be tight. It's going to be San Diego State, and then FAU. So basically, when I've got them split, I've got them split by like 1.5, which coincidentally, that's the point spread. San Diego State 1.5 over Florida Atlantic. We'll cover that in a few days. And then Miami. It's probably like 2 more steps down to Miami. So it's UConn by a huge margin. Aztecs, then Owls, then Hurricanes.
Yeah, I you know what? I impressed. I'm very impressed with Miami and what they've done. But I kind of agree with you. I would take, if Miami was facing either San Diego State or Florida Atlantic, I would take Florida Atlantic or San Diego State over Miami. I just don't. I don't want to say that the Hurricanes have been lucky, because Isaiah Wong is on a different level. He's a stellar athlete. He's really led that team. Jim Larinaga deserves all the praise in the world. I just don't know. Has Miami gotten lucky, Robert, or have they really proven that they're, one of the top tier teams in NCAA basketball?
Yeah, and let me tell you, I don't think there's going to be another time, anytime in the next decade, that the Hurricanes are going to be able to come in and say, hey, we could actually win a title here. Every one of these schools is actually probably going to be able to say that, because look at anyone that's a name and anyone that you're used to seeing as a brand in this tournament, long gone. With the way that Miami, and it's a shame because I wish Miami was on the other side of the bracket. I would have liked to have seen them in the championship, but
yeah,
they're going up against the buzzsaw that is UConn. They, to me, are probably, even though I just ranked them as the 4th among 4, they just seem to have a rubber band flexibility in terms of how they can, pose threats against other schools.
They adjust really well to their
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's exactly it. You got it, Allie.
Because I think in just about every game, they have been down at one point. Maybe not Drake. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But they were down against Indiana and they came back. Same thing against Houston. Like they have seemed to just make adjustments where needed be. I don't think they excel at one particular thing in general. They're just a solid team. So I'm really excited for the game, UConn and Miami. I do think UConn is going to win. We'll talk about if I think that Miami is going to cover later this week. But before we wrap up, Robert, let's talk one more time about the Sweet 16 Elite 8. What else surprised you in this one that we haven't mentioned so far?
To me, it was, I didn't think that we were going to see some of these schools appear and go so far. Creighton, I'm pleased with how they performed. I didn't think that they would do, and advance as far as they did. Tennessee getting eliminated, to me, that one was definitely a head scratcher. I thought that we would have seen them final.
I wasn't surprised about that one, actually, because if you remember, we both did. We both picked Florida Atlantic to cover, but I said I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee lost. I was just not high on Tennessee this whole time. I had them losing in the first round, so I wasn't too surprised.
That's true. So I don't know. I mean, at this point, I'm kind of circling everything around UConn. But if there was, again, the biggest surprise for me, kudos to Miami, who definitely had a really rocky way to get to where they needed to go here in the Final Four.
Yeah.
Allie, how about your biggest surprise?
I do think how UCLA ended up losing really did shock me, but entering the Sweet 16 and entering the Elite 8, I still got to go with Alabama losing to San Diego State. I did not think that they would get crushed the way they did. Like, what does it mean for Alabama's program, Robert? And actually, let's go back to this. Do you think that the tournament seeded all the 1 seeds wrong?
Absolutely. I do. Yes.
Like, if you had like not knowing the outcome, but do you think Purdue, Kansas, Houston, and Alabama, which team, like what team should have been number 1? What do you think?
Well, first off, get Purdue out of there hard. Definitely no.
Yes,
I don't want to
100%.
see
I was
Purdue.
not high on Purdue all year. I was not.
Purdue should not have been. Kansas probably should not have been a number one either. If anyone, I would probably say Arizona should have been, a little bit lower as well. So if I'm
Right.
going with my ones, I mean, I know this is crazy looking hindsight right now, but I still would have had Houston as a 1 seed. Uh, Probably UCLA, UConn, and Texas.
Yeah, I was surprised UConn was a number 4 seed. I thought they would had a chance at a number 2 seed, maybe number 3 seed. I
Right?
thought Texas should have had a number 1 seed over Kansas. They did beat
Yeah.
them in the Big 12 tournament. I thought that they were deserving. I agree. Purdue should have been 2 minimum, maybe even 3. I just was not high on Purdue. I still agree with you, Alabama and Houston, but I would be like you. I'd put Texas in there, and even though UCLA lost to Arizona in the Pac-12 championship, I would have put UCLA there as well. Kansas, I was so impressed with all year, but they really didn't do well down the stretch. I think Bill Self being in the hospital had a lot to do with it, but I agree with you there. And let's just ask one more thing. You know, all the 2 seeds, Robert, really underperformed too. Arizona was out the first day of the tournament. Marquette lost to Michigan State. UCLA lost in the Sweet 16, and then Texas went and lost in the in the Elite Eight. So at least Texas did something that they were expected of. But how would you have reseeded the number 2s?
Great point. Yeah, and I could tell you late, as in like Monday, Tuesday, leading into the tournament, Marquette. Man, did we get so many tickets written on Marquette to
I
win.
did not fall into that. That's why I had Michigan State beating them in the second round. I was sold on Marquette losing.
How, right? So, okay, who were the twos? The twos, I think, were UCLA, Texas, Marquette, and Arizona.
Yeah.
Gonzaga should have been a 2.
Yeah, I think Gonzaga, Kansas would have dropped to number 2 if you put Texas as a number 1. I don't think Arizona deserved. I actually would have given Kansas State a number 2. I think they were a very underrated team, and UConn should have been a number 2 as well.
Kansas State was way. I agree with you there. I think that they should have done a little bit better. And outside of that, I probably could think about. Man, well, I jumped UConn all the way to a 1 from a 4, so that's a pretty big gulp right there. The other twos, UCLA as a 2 does make sense. Texas, I wanted them as a 1, so I can't be too disappointed with them being a 2. Marquette should have been bounced, and then obviously Arizona, I don't believe it should have been there. So reseeding them, man. Yeah, I like your point there with K-State, and then probably, I guess looking back, I guess Creighton was definitely underseeded.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think that both UConn and Creighton were the 2 best teams in the Big East. I did not get the Marquette hype, and you see it year after year. We've seen Seton Hall do that how many times, win the Big East tournament out of nowhere, and then they bounce in the first round.
Yes, so right.
I don't put too much weight on the Big East winner. And again, I think I read a stat like Shaka Smart is something like 2-12 in the tournaments, and he led VCU on that ridiculous run back in 2011. I think it was 2011. So
I swear, going into this, I gotta admit it because it's too hysterical. I saw Shaka Smart. I'm like, hey, wait, he's a coach of VCU, isn't he? I think, wait a second.
He made a trip in Texas in between. So. He was their head coach for a few years. I think they're still riding on that VCU run. I'm not a big fan of Shaka Smart and how he coaches, but that is our episode for today. It was great to recap with you, Robert. We'll be back later this week to give you a preview of the Final Four. We'll have all the odds. We'll have our takes. We'll give any injury updates. I don't believe there is any, but if any surface, we'll bring them up. And before we sign off, Robert, any last words or thoughts for the audience?
All right, on. You guys have done so great listening in. And of course, you know exactly where to find us. Of course, we're at Nothing But Locks on Twitter, and you'll see all the updates coming in from there. Any thoughts, by the way, go ahead and just reply to our podcast posts. Love to go ahead and talk about them as we start to lead into what's going to be a really fun spring and a healthy summer.
Very well said, Robert. We got again, we have the episode this week. We'll talk next Monday about the finals championship. And then, Robert, we got the NFL draft coming up. We have MLB season kicking off. So NBA playoffs, we have a ton to talk about. So it's a really good time of year for a sports fans. Anything else? Again, I know I just asked you, but anything else with all the sports coming up?
Fine. Okay, I'm going to do it right here. You have a chance right this minute. You can have Lamar Jackson instead of Daniel Jones. Are you trading for him?
No. I'm not, because besides Lamar's MVP season, I just don't see the numbers. I think we talked one episode, Robert, about how I compared Lamar Jackson's stats to Daniel Jones's this year. This was before Lamar Jackson got hurt. And Daniel Jones surpassed him in every category. I know it's probably the unpopular opinion, but again, I'll keep beating the same drum that Lamar Jackson, he's just been injury prone, as could be the last few seasons. I think he's missed 8 games in each, I think. I have to go look at that number again. He hasn't had one season where he's played a full season. I'm not falling for Lamar's hype. And I think that again, I'm not into quarterbacks that strictly are run first quarterbacks. I think Lamar is a run first quarterback. So no, I'm not giving up 2 first rounders or Daniel Jones for Lamar Jackson. Are you?
You know, now that I think about it, I will be happy running into the season with Daniel Jones. I do think that Lamar Jackson should end up on an NFC team someplace, though.
I think he's going to be with Washington. I've said that since day one. I think he's going to be with the Commanders. I think he likes to fit with Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator. You have Ron Rivera, who coached a similar player in Cam Newton MVP season. So I think Washington's the favorite. How about you?
Well done. That's actually a really good fit. And I really would like to see him there. You're right.
All right, everyone. We'll talk more football as well. Maybe we'll give a little preview. I'm sure a lot will go down between now and Thursday. Aaron Rodgers is still a Packer. I still don't think that Jets trade is going to go down, but we'll see. Take care.